Welcome back to the 127 Fit Podcast. Today's guest is an entrepreneur, certified strength and conditioning specialist, a dad, and podcaster. Today's guest is Dave Glaser. Dave, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit Podcast.
Thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. So we're going to jump right into things here. I've got 4 questions as kind of part of a warm-up to kind of get the ball rolling in regards to our conversation. So the first question that I have for you is, how do you start your day? And do you have maybe like a specific morning routine that you like to stick to on most mornings?
Yeah, every morning. Let's see. Weekdays, I'm pretty strict. I have a couple clients that I work with in person at 6 a.m. 2 days for one of those guys, 3 days for the other. So I'll wake up around 5 and get my morning journaling done. I'll, do the toiletries, brush my teeth, use the restroom, and then I'll walk the dog for a little bit. And that takes up about half an hour of my day.
Okay.
So then I'm pretty much off and running after that.
Perfect.
To make my workout from 6 to 7.
Okay. Now, I want to touch really quickly here, Dave, on the journaling. What is the journaling kind of entail? Is it more like kind of like I am statements or phrases, or is it just you kind of putting personal thoughts to paper? What does that look like?
I begin with 3 statements of gratitude. It can be as simple as, heck, I'm grateful that I slept great last night, or I'm thankful that I have financial abundance right now. I'm grateful for my health. Something very simple that I'm feeling that morning. It's kind of a mental check-in for me, but I kind of let it go free form after that. I don't have any agenda whatsoever to the journaling. I may have some questions that I woke up with, or some processing that I had tried to finish the night before. The night before consists of a lesson learned type of a journaling. So if I went to sleep and I did my traditional REM cycles, maybe I actually came up with a couple of answers from my day the day before. A lot of people dream journal. That's not what I'm doing here. But what I am doing is I'm waking up fresh, and I have thoughts that begin my day. So that kind of gets the ball rolling, and then I call them letters to God.
Right,
so it's the way that I get my prayer done, and then my intuition is how I actually hear the answers to those questions.
Beautiful. All right, thank you for sharing that. The second question that I have for you here, Dave, is do you have a favorite book or a book that you like to gift often? And if there is more than one, please feel free to share.
Sure. I think that kind of 2 or 3 years into my business, I was struggling to break that $50,000, $60,000 mark, and I understood that a business book would help me out. So there's a couple out there, Gay Hendricks and his wife. They wrote a book called The Big Leap, and there are 4 limiting beliefs that we pretty much hold on to as human beings that hold us back from reaching our financial goals, our mental, emotional, spiritual, relationship goals, and they're all patterns that we learned as children.
Right. Now, just for maybe a listener or two out there that might not really fully understand or grasp what a limiting belief is, what is an example of a limiting belief, and kind of what does that entail?
Sure. The number one limiting belief that I kind of resonate with is I feel like I'm a burden on other people. And so when it comes to my personal training business, it was very hard for me in the beginning of that career as a self-employed personal trainer to ask for the sale, because I felt like that finance would be a burden, or the transaction was a burden. So what I had to understand is that my clients wanted to buy. They just didn't want to be sold to. So I created a buying environment during the consultation process, and it helped me convert a lot more sales without actually feeling like a burden.
Right.
I kind of met myself in the middle on not selling, but just providing a lot of value, so that they really had no reason not to buy.
Right. Okay. So kind of like the limiting belief is like a belief that's within us or conditioned within us that basically it holds us back from maybe stepping into our full potential. Is that fair to say?
Breaking through a ceiling, or kind of a brick wall that we keep running up against.
Perfect.
Another one of those limiting beliefs is fear of not measuring up, or I'm afraid I'm not good enough.
Right.
I think a lot of people can actually resonate with that one a lot. In a lot of facets of their life too.
Right, and I think that kind of falls into like I've had a lot of amazing female guests on the podcast, and a lot of them have shared about kind of like not feeling worthy and really having to kind of step into that worthiness and all of that. So I think that might kind of fall into kind of that limiting belief that you just mentioned. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a correlation there.
Right.
I think that women primarily would speak on that.
Okay.
Men feel it too. They're just trained and not to speak about it.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. They're taught to stuff it down.
Right. Cool. All right. So, do you have a favorite quote or mantra?
Absolutely. I love Teddy Roosevelt as a leader. That was really kind of like the golden era of presidents there, between the late 1800s and the early to mid 1900s. And he said, "Comparison is the thief of joy."
Yep.
And that one just lands home for me. Like 2019, we've got social media everywhere, and people are posting the highlight reel of their life. And you know what? If I'm comparing myself to their life, I'll just feel unworthy every day.
Right.
The only person I have to compare myself is to the person I was yesterday.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's cool. And Teddy Roosevelt, man, like he has that one really long quote, the man in the arena. That one's been at a certain season in my life was just very impactful. So, and he's got all kinds of awesome quotes out there. And I didn't finish it wasn't an autobiography, but it was a book on him. It was, I don't know, like 1,000 pages. I didn't finish it, but I read enough of it to just really realize how amazing of a man he was, and just how focused and kind of driven he was kind of in his area of life. So that's great. So, and
to be the leader of a country at that time too.
Right, yeah.
Being that man, he was almost like the pinnacle or the ideal of masculinity.
For sure.
You know, and he was never overbearing, and
right.
We didn't have cameras and we didn't have media or news at that time that was broadcast 24/7. We didn't have that. So we do know a lot about Teddy Roosevelt, but just imagine being in his presence. He's almost untouchable, unfuckable with.
Yeah. And something else that I took away from that book that I didn't finish, but I read enough of to kind of get the grasp of Teddy Roosevelt and his background, was physical fitness was a pretty. And not necessarily maybe physical fitness, but just being outdoors and that moving and kind of that part of manhood and stuff was a huge part of his upbringing, his life, because he spent some time in the Dakotas, like in South Dakota, and that's where I went to college, and so it was just kind of cool, kind of piecing all that together and hearing that aspect of his life. So, all right, so the last question, Dave, that I have for you is a part of the warm up. Do you have a favorite or most listened to podcast? And with that, go ahead. I know that you're a podcaster. You have 2 podcasts yourself. So with that, go ahead and share with my listeners the names of your podcasts too, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, absolutely. I really like Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard. And the reason why I like that is, yes, he interviews celebrities, and it's kind of geared towards comedy when he does, but he's really connecting with other celebrities when he has them on in an authentic way.
Right.
He's completely transparent about his addiction and his challenges, but also transparent about his relationship with his wife, Kristen. And I really respect that a lot. But he's very insightful as a facilitator on the podcast. That's why it's called Armchair Expert, is because he's just sitting there, he's chilling, and he brings something to the table. So I really enjoy his perspective. But when he does bring an expert on, called Expert on Expert, these experts are the leaders in the country right now that we should be looking to for counsel and coaching. And people like Esther Perel and Dr. Topol was actually doing a lot of research on AI to help do scans of x-rays and scans of CTs and things like that, so that we can have more accuracy in our treatment and diagnoses of patients.
Right.
And I think that a podcast like that, having experts like that, is really great way to educate America right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's powerful, because to be honest with you, the whole podcast kind of platform and niche is really where I get most of my continued learning and education.
Same.
And it's to me, it just blows my mind that we can literally put our headphones on or earbuds, whatever you want to call them, and basically pick and choose who we want to listen to and what we want to listen about. And it's just like, again, those experts that, I mean, you'd have to pay thousands, if not millions of dollars to go to a conference or be in the same room with them. they're putting all of their stuff out there literally for free.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, it's unbelievable. So it's like people that don't even, I mean, there's a lot of people, to be honest with you, Dave, like I ask them, like, well, what do you do? And I'll be a teacher, and then I'll, if I'm thinking about talking about the podcast, I'm like, do you know what podcasts are? Because a lot of people, honestly, and especially, older people, they don't even know what podcasts are yet, which blows my mind. But it's like, I think it's just an amazing platform, and I think we just, as podcasters, need to continue to promote the platform and just encourage people to listen, because there's so much valuable information, like you said, that people are sharing, So what are the names of your two podcasts then?
I began both my podcasts right around the same time last year.
Okay.
June of last year is when I began. And I have a mission to share the benefits of fitness and nutrition for mental health.
Okay.
And the Aspire Higher podcast is for personal trainers who want to build a business, both online and in person, so it's sustainable. A lot of challenges for personal trainers who own their own business and trying to build a clientele is that they're wearing too many hats.
Right.
There's CMO, CTO,
right.
CFO, CEO, and then their head trainer. And sometimes if they're running their own studio, they're janitor as well. And that's where I was. I'm not passionate about running 4 walls and a ceiling. I simply just want to work with people. And so I turned all of my businesses into a virtual, accessible, mobile-friendly program so that I could have the time freedom to give back to the community of personal trainers who simply just want to learn how to build their business better and more sustainably, so that they don't have to work 80 hours a week to run 30 session hours a week. Because you finish your sessions in the morning and you got to go do marketing in the afternoon, then you got to come back to the studio and do some more sessions just to make ends meet. And I think it was really right around year 3 of my career, my business, that the light bulb kind of went off. The gym owner that I was working with at the time, I rented studio space. She didn't want to train interns. So I asked for the responsibility, and the first few interns that I worked with were really great people.
Yeah.
One was a professional intern. He wanted to learn how to build his own business, and he was a great intern. He referred 2 more. They were twin sisters that worked with me for a summer for school credit from Kansas Wesleyan University. And it's so unimaginably hard to work with twins, because I'm like, hey, do you remember that exercise we were working on yesterday? She's like, no, Dave, that was my sister.
Yeah.
They worked opposite schedules. They lived together. They shared one car, and they worked at Elitch's just to make ends meet while they were working on their internship with me.
Okay.
And so when I was deciding whether or not I wanted to keep the studio, I decided a podcast was a great way to share that message. So Aspire Higher is paired with my book. It's a memoir of how anxiety and depression fueled a desire for legacy in fitness and nutrition. So I took a lot of the content that's in the book and I kind of narrated it onto the podcast.
Okay, cool.
But like yourself, I also invite experts to come on and share like marketing tips, finance tips. Let's see, there's a videographer that came on and shared about podcasting,
Absolutely,
so a couple others like how to make a great first impression. That's really big in our business if we want to turn our selling environment into a buying environment. It's to make a great first impression. So there were some experts that I sought out that I invited on that really expanded my vision and my mission for what the Aspire Higher podcast can do for personal trainers.
Beautiful, yeah. And then what's your second podcast all about?
It's actually the most rewarding thing that I do from week to week. My fitness business is called Fit Life Champions, and we work with 25 to 40-year-old busy adults that want to begin a strength program safely. And there were more women than men that gravitated to that business. And I needed something to connect and communicate to that community that didn't necessarily have to do with fitness directly. So I thought, you know what? I'm passionate about relationships. I'm passionate about a relationship tool called the Enneagram.
Okay.
And why don't I create a marketing strategy for that business so that I can build a community of authentic people around me? Because I went through a couple of breakups. Yeah. I got frustrated by that. But to cure that frustration, I decided to just create a community of authentic people for myself.
Right.
And so I started the Believe, Be Real, Be Bold podcast for authentic dating in Denver.
Love it, man. That's good. So we're gonna there's a lot of stuff that we're gonna unpack from just like those 2 podcasts that you have. But before we do that, I would like to, for myself and then also for my listeners, my audience, Dave, just kind of get a little bit of a backstory of you kind of. So like, where did you grow up? What were those earlier years kind of look like? Were you involved in sports? Just kind of give us a little snapshot of that if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, absolutely. I was born in Billings, Montana in 1980, so I'm really old. I just turned 39 last week, and I played every sport growing up. I played baseball, football, hockey, soccer, and by the time I got to high school, I was always undersized, and I kind of picked on, a little bit bullied, and I never really took it personally because I always knew that it was their problem that they bullied me for.
Right.
But I couldn't play football at college level. I tried out for baseball as a catcher, and I should have tried out as a pitcher. I had a better command of my pitching than I did of catching. Uh-huh. So I landed on cross country as my sport.
Cool.
And ended up running like a 17:29 5K and a 5:04 mile by my senior year.
Sweet.
And then I just took the rest of my senior year to work and run, and then I got into weightlifting by the time I finished my senior year in high school. And my freshman year in college, I put on 45 pounds of muscle because I was always undersized. I was about 150 pounds when I graduated high school.
Right.
And that college lifestyle, it's pretty easy to gain weight.
It is, it definitely is. Yeah, so now in regards to like just being, let's touch on, kind of like being undersized and stuff, because like I was a late bloomer. Like I was 103 pounds going into my freshman year of high school. Running was a big part of kind of my upbringing and stuff too. And for me, like because now like in our culture, in our society, and being in public education myself and stuff, like this whole like bullying thing, and like just like everything else in our culture, I think it gets completely blown out of the water, blown out of proportion. Because like when I was growing up, did I quote unquote when I was younger like get bullied? Yeah, I did, but like it was just kind of like the way things were. And I'm not saying it's like wrong now that the bullying is coming out and stuff like that, but I just feel like there's some things in life that are just necessary for us to go through. And I'm not saying bullying per se is necessary for us to go through, but just kind of like the guy to guy, kind of the razzing and giving people a hard time. I think it's healthy actually. But for you personally, just kind of being undersized, because at some point you realize that, right? And trying to be an athlete and stuff, there's bigger guys, faster, stronger. Psychologically, mentally, what did that kind of do to you, or did that kind of play into anything for you when you were younger, and then also as you got older?
Sure. I think what you're touching on is men and boys need a rite of passage. And the rite of passage can come with a hardening of your we're not talking about emotions, but we are talking about a hardening of you physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, so that we can be leaders, so that we can be great fathers, great husbands, great partners, etc. And what the razzing or the hazing or the bullying did for me was it taught me that other people had the problem, which allowed me to be more resilient when I was facing the negativity. Because I'm like, all right, kids calling me homo and faggot and gay when I was growing up. Well, I know truthfully that's not true. So these are just them calling me names. And that's an example that's very common in the locker room. It's very common in our sports culture growing up as boys. So I never took it personally. But what it did is it prepared me for the rest of my life. There's a great book out there called The Coddling of the American Mind. And the takeaway from the book is prepare your children for the road, not the road for your children. So, like, do you ever see a jungle gym at a park anymore? No, because of the litigious society that we live in and the safety and security. And every parent is going to sue the city for having a dangerous playground in their local park. But what does that take away from the kids? Well, it takes away the scrapes, the bumps, the bruises that we're kind of supposed to go through biologically speaking.
For sure. And
so I went through those bumps, bruises, and we fell off our bike and we slid into second base and we tore our pants and we scraped up our leg and we got hit by the baseball in practice and in games because that's part of the sport.
Absolutely.
Those things teach us who we are and how we can handle adversity. And that's what kids need nowadays as they grow older. And one thing that I do now that I never did as a kid is the sport of jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu has been, for me, the biggest catalyst for personal growth in all of this kind of culmination of my childhood into young adulthood, being a young dad at 22 years old. Now she's 17 next month. And jiu-jitsu prepares me in a healthy way to deal with all of that crap that comes professionally, personally, mentally, road rage. I would never even come across a moment of road rage because everything I do on the mat is so much easier than the things that I deal with in the rest of my day.
Yeah.
So if your parents out there, or if you're younger adults and you're looking to become more resilient and become a better human being, jiu-jitsu is a great way to actually see who you are as a person.
Yeah, I know you're familiar with Jocko Willink and kind of some of those guys out there that are specifically in the podcast world. I know they're very adamant, about jiu-jitsu and just kind of like the positive benefits that come from it. So that's cool. Now, growing up in Montana, it's definitely Billings is. How big is Billings? I mean, it's a bigger.
Now it's
city,
about now it's about 110,000 people.
Okay.
When I left there, it was probably about 85 or 90,000 people.
Is that the biggest town in Montana?
Yeah.
Okay. So like what I want to kind of pull from this though is just like Montana's just it's sparsely populated. I grew up in Iowa, went to school in South Dakota, so I understand kind of all that. But there's I think like anything in life, there's positive and negatives to that. But what were some of those positive things of kind of growing up in Montana? I'm sure you probably spent a lot of time in the outdoors. You said you ran cross country. Obviously, that's outdoors. But what was it overall a pretty positive experience being able to grow up in Montana in a beautiful outdoor setting like that?
Yeah, we were definitely encouraged to spend as much time outside as we possibly could.
Yeah.
We rode our bikes to and from school no matter what the weather. And if the weather was too bad to ride our bikes, we walked.
Yeah.
So we were tough kids, both my sisters and I. And I lived there until I was about 9.
Okay.
So I got my first exposure to baseball in Montana. It's a very big, popular sport in Montana. So I knew Little League, and then we went to Virginia for a couple years, played football and baseball there. And I could just slide right into the baseball culture of Virginia because we could play longer and more often there. And then we came to Colorado when I was about 11 or 12.
Okay.
And so we grew up in the foothills, went to Chatfield High School, and we were riding our bikes every day. If we weren't riding our bikes, we were hiking the Red Rocks, hiking the Hogbacks, etc. And essentially just growing up as kids. We were shoved out of the house.
Right.
I didn't have helicopter parents. I didn't have anybody really looking over my shoulder, which prepared me for the road.
Absolutely.
It helped me build some independence. Mentally, physically, and then community-wise too, we had a group of boys in the neighborhood that knew how to cause trouble.
Right.
Right. And I was always the conscious one of the group. I was always
you were the good seed among the bad seeds, or what?
I was the one that they were always trying to get to do the stupid stuff.
Okay.
And I was always on the border of like between the good kids and the bad kids because I could easily be talked into having a good time, like setting off firecrackers in a PVC pipe, which in our neighborhood sounds exactly like a gun going off, and it echoes off of these mountains that are around us or whatever. So we got the cops approaching us every once in a while, and they knew we were kids being kids, so they confiscated the firecrackers and they're like, "Go home, get out of here."
Yeah.
Whereas today that would be like a big deal. You'd have 6 or 7 cop cars pulling up to you in the local park, not playing on a jungle gym, right?
Yeah. So I want to camp out here just for a minute because I had a very similar upbringing. Just very free range, and we lived on a couple acres. We were in city limits, but we had like a little creek that ran by our house and crossed this little wooden bridge to get to our house, and we had wild deer and fox and turkey in our backyard, and we had area and space outside to just roam, myself and my younger brother, and that was so healthy, and I really firmly believe that really helped shape myself and my younger brother into the men we are today. So would you agree with that like for kids, and you're a dad and stuff, so you have that perspective, but for kids it's absolutely vital, isn't it, for them to kind of have some of that free rangeness in their life and to be able to explore the outdoors?
Yeah, it teaches them responsibility. If mom says come home for dinner by 5:30, well, then the kid has to understand how to learn to read time.
Right.
And then also that helps set boundaries with other children. Hey man, my mom asked me to be home for dinner at 5:30. I can't be late because then there'd be consequences. What does that teach a child? It teaches them how to communicate to their friends that, like, I got to go home by this time because last time I was late, I got spanked, or I got sent to my room without dinner, or I simply just got a punishment that I didn't like. So that's what the parent-child relationship is all about, is like giving them a little bit of a leash to learn on their own, but also reining them back in so that they're safe, they're learning responsibility, and they're also prepared for adulthood too.
Right, yeah. And I just feel like, in our culture nowadays, we aren't allowing our kids to be prepared for the quote-unquote real world, because everything that we've kind of touched on is like taking away the jungle gyms. They're not really outside. You get into the public school and they don't really have PE, and kind of the whole bullying craze, and just it's like, as these parents kind of want to quote-unquote give the best for their kids and become these helicopter parents, it's like you're not preparing your kids to be the best that they can be in the future. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have one job as parents, and that's to make our children into great adults. Because we have, human beings are the longest period out of any mammal where the child stays with the parents.
Right.
That's 18 years, by law or by culture. After 18, how much more of their life do they have on their own? 60
Great
years?
point. Yeah.
70
Yeah.
years? That they have to learn as children how to manage that, because when you send them off to a community college or 4-year school at 18 years old, do they know how to be a good person, B, respectful of people in maybe like more of a power position, like a college professor or an admissions administrator, or like something as simple as your resident RA in your dorm room. Like, can you actually respect authority? That's part of being a good adult.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We just have one job as parents: make them good adults.
Yeah.
And all else comes along with that, like keep them safe,
Right.
teach them responsibility, teach them how to manage their money.
Yeah. No, it seems pretty simple, but
it's the hardest job in the world.
Right. Yeah. And I can't speak because I don't have any of my own kids, but I just feel like we're bubble wrapping these kids nowadays, and I think we're seeing some of the results of that in our society and culture. But let's move on kind of from that. And so where did you go to college, Dave? And kind of you touched a little bit on that experience, but maybe just expound a little bit more on your college experience. And then and you said you started weightlifting. Was that towards the end of high school, you said?
Yeah.
So then did that kind of stay a part of your life, and is that what you kind of studied in college? Just kind of unpack that for us if you don't mind.
Sure. Right near the end of my senior year, we had an older friend who was big into weightlifting. Like, he was a kind of a bodybuilder type.
Okay. And
he taught us how to, pretty much do the leg press correctly. That was really the only thing that we did when we went to the gym at 17 years old.
Yeah.
And, by the time I got to freshman year in college at UNC, I was leg pressing almost 800 pounds.
Cool.
And I was repping it. And that empowerment of personal strength, it almost like feeds upon itself.
For sure.
Layer upon layer upon layer. It was my introduction to personal growth, I think. And it also helped me be a better college student because I was using weightlifting as a replacement behavior for getting wasted, 5 nights a week.
Yep.
And
been
there,
done that,
right.
So I understand.
Yeah, we're all college kids. We're kind of experimenting, and we're towing the boundaries that we had set for us as children for the first time in our lives, and it's acceptable in our culture. So I spent a couple years at UNC, and the college town was not right for me. Like, Greeley is very dreary in the winter. It was my first time really feeling the effects of seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah.
And so I transferred from UNC to CSU, and I found a much better environment.
Okay.
I was still a history degree student at that time, which was never the right fit for me, but only because I didn't know what kinesiology was.
Okay.
So UNC has a kinesiology program, CSU has an exercise science program. I just wasn't familiar with the fact that this exercise science could be a degree. What am I going to do with that? I'm going to be a PE teacher?
Right.
That wasn't the only thing I wanted to do, but had I known I could have been a collegiate strength coach with that degree, I probably would have finished at UNC or CSU.
Yeah.
But then I met my daughter's mom, and she got pregnant, and we decided, I was going to work instead of finish school. I might have had like a year left on my degree. And it took me until my daughter was 8 years old to really find the purpose to show her that it was important to finish college. So I went back to school at Metro State, and I found the exercise science degree program there, and I finished in about 3 years. So I accomplished that by about 2011 when I was 31, and it took me about 9 months to start my career after that of personal training, and my mom was my first client.
Perfect, man.
And it just kind of grew from there. Over the next 5 or 6 years, I grew from one client to about $72,000 in revenue, just as a sole proprietor, working online, in person, and some meal prep coaching that I got through Precision Nutrition. Perfect.
Okay, so we're gonna completely fully dive in now into kind of the training and things of that nature. So what kind of, just before we get into kind of more specific things, just like what does personal training and just being able to work more one-on-one with people in regards to kind of their health and fitness, what does that do for you personally, Dave?
It was at that time the most rewarding thing that I was doing. To get through college, I was working nights as a bartender, and I was burnt out. I was actually suffering from exhaustion my senior year in college, and I'm surprised I actually finished, because there was one class that I was borderline C and a D in my degree program, and that class was going to hold me back from graduating. So on graduation day, I saw that professor, and I said, "Hey, am I graduating today? Like legit graduating?" And she said, "Yeah, barely, by like 0.1% point, So I graduated college, and I'd continued to work out, and I was finally getting some rest, and just still working the night job, and I had this free time during the day. So my mom decided, let's just meet once or twice a week at 24 Hour Fitness, and I'll make it easy on you, Dave. Let's meet at 11 o'clock so that you can sleep in after a late night at the bar. And I'm like really grateful for the fact that she did. She paid me for my time, and then we got busted by an assistant fitness manager there. It's kind of uncouth or frowned upon to train your own clients in a 24-hour fitness. So I found a private personal training studio, and I built from 1 client to 3 clients, back to 2, and then up to 5, and then back to 3. And then once I passed that 10 client mark, I started to see that I could do this as a career and as a business. So what that does for me personally is to watch somebody's transformation happen over time, because they come to me not looking for a quick fix. They understand that that's not possible. Some do, and then they don't really last in my training program, because it's very progressive, a progression-based training model.
For sure.
Low risk, high reward exercises that help people become more empowered so that they're stronger outside of the gym. Does that make sense?
Absolutely it does. Yeah. Great. So I want to start just kind of talking about before I turn on the mic, I kind of just asked you, like, if there's one thing that we could really talk about, or that you would want to talk about, that you're super passionate about. And you said, how you kind of use fitness and nutrition to work with, like, mental health or kind of focus on mental health. So how do you use fitness, nutrition, and mental health? How do all three of those things kind of tie together? How do you kind of present that? How do you work with people in that area?
That's the question, and I'm glad you asked that. So I've been using fitness and nutrition since I was about 17 or 18 when I got into weightlifting as a tool to help me stay even and steady in my emotional and mental health. When I'm not exercising, and I knew this right away, that if I'm not exercising regularly, if I go 2 or 3 days without jiu-jitsu or without weight training, I start to become irritable and anxious and just not a lot like myself.
Right.
So I really saw the benefits of weightlifting in the beginning for kind of resolving personal issues without necessarily having to dump it on a friend or to go through a breakup after breakup after breakup because I'm sabotaging my relationships. And I went through that pretty much lifestyle for 10 years. And I was running regularly. That was how I managed my weight. And then I developed like this really bad femoral cartilage damage from just improper nutrition and running too many miles. So I couldn't run anymore. It was actually really painful for me to run miles after miles after miles. So it was at that time that I understood that nutrition was the key. And when I changed my nutrition lifestyle, my body composition dropped. Like, I went from, 12% body fat at the end of my collegiate career to about 7.4% within that first 14 months of personal training business.
Right.
Because I needed to walk the walk and talk the talk. And then what I started to notice in that business was that people who were like me, who were using fitness and nutrition to kind of level themselves out mentally, they started gravitating to me because of whatever it be, the energy I was putting out there or the message on social media. Like, Facebook was always my number one generator of new business.
For sure.
Personal page, not business page. Because they were friends. They trusted me. They liked me. They actually paid attention to my message. And then they started gravitating to me. Because they're like, if Dave can do that with his mom, what can he do with me at 30? And we weren't necessarily like talking about mental health at that time. But about a year into my business, I went through a breakup. And I was really kind of feeling alone and isolated on an island because I wasn't talking to people. And I wrote this really cool blog that was very vulnerable and transparent about what I was going through. And my entire client list was like, Dave, thank you for sharing because we feel the same exact way. And I'm like, all right, light bulb went on at that point. And I said to myself, why not actually talk to people about self-efficacy, boosting self-confidence, decreasing stress, and boosting energy as a result of nutrition and fitness as a part of a lifestyle change. And as soon as I started doing that, life got a lot better because I was impacting lives in the same way that I wanted my life impacted too.
Right. Now, you've kind of mentioned a little bit, I think, about maybe just some anxiety and stuff for you personally. What has been like kind of that greatest struggle for you personally, Dave, in regards to mental health? I mean, has there really been a great struggle with anxiety, or has there been depression? What does that kind of look like for you personally, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. No, it's totally transparent when it comes to my story through the last 22 years, basically. Anxiety for me feels like a big weight, big pile of bricks on my chest, and it's almost paralyzing to me. Sometimes it's not panic attacks. I've been there before, but that's not common for me. Really, more what it is like anxiety will like rivet my feet to the floor, and it's so powerful that I actually can't act upon the things that I know that I'm supposed to be getting done. So it kind of puts me into this like really strict box of immobility. And I know that when I exercise, I actually come out of that so much faster. You know, thoughts are racing, thoughts are spiraling. I can't do this. I don't measure up here. I'll never reach my goals. I can't impact lives. And I'm just not worth anything. That's really what anxiety talks to me about. The depression, I would actually almost prefer to go through on a day-to-day basis. Because when I'm experiencing depression, I'm like wearing a mask. And the mask is, oh, I'm fine. Everything's okay. I can still show up to work and just get the job done. And to me, when I was starting to face that mask that I was wearing, I realized that that's not good enough for me.
Right.
Like that behavior and that choice, it's always my choice of whether or not I wear it. That choice was no longer serving me at all. So I decided to just remove the mask. And once I did and understood that vulnerability is a strength and not a weakness, I dove all into my mental health. Started seeing a counselor, started being really strict on my nutrition, got better sleep. I quit drinking for like 7 months. And really, I just built all these skills into my lifestyle, like journaling, like getting healthy sleep, drinking plenty of water, the simple things, you know, that help improve my day-to-day life. Then it bleeds into my lifestyle, and then it actually almost, in a healthy way, medicates my anxiety and depression.
Right. What are some of your triggers in regards to your anxiety and depression?
So I would say that it's behavioral. Like if I'm not eating well, I'll kind of slip down into woe is me attitude, or it'll just kind of feel like my body's not functioning the right way. And now that I'm a jiu-jitsu athlete, I can sense that almost immediately. Like within a couple days of not training, I'm like, gotta go train because I need to feel empowered and humbled, and I need to have physical connection with other human beings too. You know, so it's almost like a self-awareness body check-in for me of like, okay, I'm feeling low today. Low energy, low motivation, low inspiration. Why is that? Oh, I haven't trained since Sunday. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Let me go to the 7 o'clock class at night and get my community fix and try to choke a guy out in his PJs.
Right.
And the day is much, much better after that when you don't get choked out by a dude in his PJs.
Right.
Because that's the game is
yeah.
choke or be choked.
Right, yeah.
So I think that's a trigger for me is like, oh my gosh, I've eaten out 3 nights in a row. When I was drinking, beer is my choice. I love beer for the flavor and the experience and the social aspect of it. But if I go to San Diego for a bachelor party like last Labor Day and I drink for 4 days, I come back and my knees hurt for 3 weeks and my gluten, I don't know if it's a gluten intolerance, but it's definitely a sensitivity to like that inflammatory food.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my body is telling me, get your shit right, Dave. And I'm like, absolutely. That's my body check-in. So those are my triggers physically. And then mentally and emotionally, I think it's my relationships with others, which is really what I set out to discover with the podcast. Each week I interview a different expert in the Denver or across the world on their point of view of what it takes to have healthy relationships.
So let's go there. Let's expound on that because relationships in life is everything. Like I don't care if you work at home or whatever, you're down in your basement just doing whatever, like 24/7, 365. On some level, even with social media, there's you have to interact with other human beings. So relationships, like where did this impetus kind of come for you, Dave, specifically in regards to wanting to focus more on relationships? I know you talked about some different breakups and different things like that. Was that kind of the impetus? And then how did you kind of just dive all in and say, you know what, I need to really focus on this personally, and I also want to help other people in this relationship realm?
Yeah, that was exactly it. I went through 2 breakups within about 6 months. And what I started to understand by, first of all, speaking to my counselor, they're a great local team of counselors that I found, speaking to them for about 4 months. And as soon as I was ready or thought I was ready to get back into the dating scene, I ran into a couple of inauthentic people that would basically just say whatever they could to get whatever they wanted. And that's not okay with me. That doesn't actually serve my boundaries very well.
Right.
So I decided, you know what, instead of getting frustrated with that, let's create a community of authentic people around me that gives us better people to choose from to actually spend our time with. So again, I felt a little isolated after the breakup. And then when I first started talking to professionals on the podcast or outside the podcast, I really discovered that everything starts with me. And it all comes back to me because I could run from my problems, but no matter where I go, there I am. The common denominator was me.
For sure.
And if I didn't continue to grow personally and professionally and spiritually and emotionally and mentally, I was going to keep repeating these patterns. Yep. So I knew of a couple of dating coaches in town, and I'm like, oh, this will be a lot of fun. Let me grab a mic and my Mac, and let me interview these people, get their permission to record a conversation between us, because I really set out to find where in Denver do we find authentic people. And the result after maybe 6 months, 9 months, now we've been about 15 months worth of recording podcast episodes, is that you won't find an authentic person in Denver until you yourself are your most authentic self. And then you start gravitating or you start attracting other authentic people. And that could be in a friendship, could be in a romantic relationship, it could be in a co-working situation, could be one of my jiu-jitsu teammates. Oh, well, why do I have conflict with this fellow blue belt who wants to tear my head off every day? Well, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm showing up as the tough guy in the gym. Maybe I'm showing up with a chip on my shoulder or my ego is not in check. And then I get humbled because he chokes me out 5 times in 6 minutes. And I'm like, okay, it was me. You know, I was thinking more highly of myself than I actually should be.
Yeah. Well, we all, I struggle with that. I think most of us do, but yeah. So you mentioned boundaries in terms of relationships. What does that kind of mean? And then what are maybe some examples of boundaries. And I really, again, because there's, we have relationships with coworkers, relationships with, friends and family, but I want to really focus on relationships with like an intimate relationship, because I'm a single guy, and it's something that I'm really trying to work on in my life, and some different barriers I'm trying to break through in regards to all that. And I know that there's going to be a lot of listeners out there that just kind of want to hear more about this. So boundaries, like personal boundaries, what does that mean? What does that look like? And then, having those boundaries when you're trying to step into like the dating game, quote unquote.
Yep. It is kind of a game, isn't it? It's pretty savage out there.
It's a wild game sometimes, man.
So stepping back just a little bit from boundaries, because we'll get there. That's a very important topic. We have to set our intentions first. Is my intention to go out to date just to date and to learn something about that game out there? Or is my intention to find a relationship long term? Right. Or is my intention simply just to hook up? Mm-hmm. All those are very good intentions if it's right for you. Mm-hmm. Again, like I said, it starts with you first. So set your intentions. And then come the boundaries. Okay, well, if I'm looking to date just to date, then my boundaries are going to be a little bit different. They might actually, my boundary is I'm okay with online dating because I get to meet a lot of people and the numbers game comes into play, and I swipe 100 times to find 20 matches to then go out on 5 dates. That's a boundary. But when you get onto that date, are you going to sleep with them on the first night? Right. That's a boundary. When you go out with them a second time, are you going to pay? Or are they going to pay? Or are you going to split? That's a little bit of a boundary, because we do need to kind of negotiate what our financial terms here are. Sure, right? Yeah. Those are simple. If we're looking for a relationship, this is where it gets important when it comes to boundaries. Your boundaries have to change if you're looking for something serious. Would you sleep with somebody on the first date if you're looking for a serious relationship?
Me personally?
Yeah, sure.
Me personally, no.
No, because that's a boundary, and it's a healthy decision for you to make a real connection with another person.
Right, yeah.
But if you're completely vibing it and you're like totally into this person, and maybe you aren't drinking too much on that first date and it goes there, we shouldn't have any shame about it. But however, just understand that your boundaries are your boundaries for a reason. Mm-hmm. They keep us safe and they keep us healthy. The boundary that I like to talk about most, and it comes down to the booty call. If I'm personally looking for a long-term relationship with one person, and I get a text at 10:30 at night, what does that insinuate?
You tell me.
Right. The person sending that you up text at 10:30, 11, or 2 a.m. is looking for one thing, most likely. Maybe they've been out drinking and they actually want to come over and they want to hook up.
Yep.
That's outside of my boundary if I'm looking for a long-term relationship, which I am.
Yeah.
So my boundary is set at, I don't text somebody I'm not dating exclusively, or dating with interest, or dating to see where it goes after 9 o'clock.
Okay.
And that is, for me, because of my lifestyle, I get up at 5 a.m.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If I'm texting at 9:45, 10:30 at night, and we're not exclusively dating, or we're not 5 dates in, 6 dates in, whatever, there's no number on it, but if I'm not feeling it, I can't text you after 9 o'clock, because that's going to make me a zombie the next day.
Right. Yeah.
And then we come back to this mental health spiral that we go down of like not enough sleep, not appropriate or not proper nutrition. Oops, I skipped a workout at 6 a.m. because I was texting her until 10:30 at night. Does that make sense?
Absolutely it does, yeah.
And then it comes down to, okay, what about that good morning text? Hey, beautiful, good morning. I just wanted to say hi. When do we send that? Well, it's different for everybody, but this comes down to boundaries as well. My busiest time of day is from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. as a personal trainer. I can't send that, hey, good morning text.
Right.
Professionally speaking. I'm with clients from 6 to 9.
Right.
Or I'm preparing for my busy day, or, you know what? If I've only gone out with them 1 or 2 times, and I text them at 6:45 in the morning, which is, I've been up for 2 hours, that might be outside of their boundaries. And then I'm encroaching on their health their healthy boundaries and their safety. Oh, what's he doing texting me at 6:45 in the morning? That's making me uncomfortable right now. You kind of have to understand who you are. And then when you go out a few times, you can understand who they are. And then they start to understand you. And it's this really positive building of trust Whereas I'm not sending that you up text at 1:30 in the morning.
Right.
I'm not sending that good morning, beautiful text too early. Like, it's so great to receive that text, but we can't do it out of obligation.
Right.
We have to do it out of just pure heart. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
So I like talking about those boundaries because I went out with a girl once, and she stole a couple of kisses from me at the end of the first date. I had a couple glasses of wine. She had a couple glasses of champagne. And I didn't hear from her again for 6 weeks. And then she sent me a text on a Friday night at 9:45 p.m. And I look at it, I'm like, I haven't heard from you in 6 weeks. I waited until 10:30 a.m. the next day just to check in and say, hey, what's up? Sorry, I was already sleeping.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what her intentions are there with that text. It's really not that late, but it's really late in the evening if I haven't heard from you. It's like 6 weeks too late, you know?
That's crazy, man. That's crazy, yeah.
So that's where that boundary of 9 p.m. came from, is like, you don't get that access to me if we're not intentionally connecting.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's what happens. And then after we set our intentions and we talk about our boundaries, or we set our healthy boundaries, then we have to learn how to manage our own expectations. And that starts with us again. Like, I'm seeing somebody, I've been seeing them for 2 months, and I start to have expectations about where we're going, where we're headed. That might not be the same as the other person. We can't assume that we're on the same page, and that's where communication really comes in. And the reason why I love the Enneagram so much, it's a personality assessment tool, is because it gives couples a common language. Oh, well, you're a personality type that's very intense. You go all in right away. That's me. You might be a little bit more chill and like, I don't necessarily want to be seen right away by you just bearing my whole soul. Well, if you understand that and you know that about your partner, you're really going to start to have a lot of grace and compassion for the other person, which then helps us manage our expectations and not assume anything.
Right. So my takeaway from you just kind of talking about the boundaries and intentions and stuff, and you mentioned the word kind of as you were sharing is communication. So would you agree that in any type of relationship with another human being, communication is everything? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Authentic communication is key.
Right. Now, explain that, because we hear the word authenticity and authentic gets thrown around all over the place now. So break that down. What is authentic communication?
Authentic communication comes down to intent and motivation.
Okay.
Let me just use an example of the first breakup I went through in 2017. She was my girlfriend for 3.5 years. We took a short little break in the middle just to kind of rediscover ourselves and find out where we were going individually so that we could come back together as a couple in a partnership.
Yeah.
And up to that point, it was definitely the best relationship I had been in. However, I just wasn't seeing it for what it was. So let's just say in the very beginning of our relationship, we were getting to know each other. We were sleeping together at this point. We were dating exclusively, boyfriend, girlfriend. And we go to a hotel. And she's doing a work function. And I see her interacting with one of the front desk managers. And I'm like, that's awfully flirty.
Right.
You know? Like, it's making me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
How flirty this person was, the girl I was seeing with that front desk manager. And I decided to actually ask a little bit more about what was going on there. And as it turns out, she had been to that hotel a couple months before when we were just starting to date. Okay. You know, like we had no exclusive tag on us. We definitely didn't have very many expectations, so we were free to do whatever we wanted.
Yeah.
But she went to this hotel, and the front desk manager walked her to her room. And me, coming from the hotel and restaurant industry before I was a strength coach, knew that was unprofessional and inappropriate. It's against most rules in most hotels for the front desk manager to walk somebody to their hotel room. And she was telling me this story after it happened, and it made me uncomfortable, but she wasn't necessarily authentically telling me what actually was occurring. She was telling me the story to manipulate and control and to make me jealous.
Right.
That's where the difference between communication. It's great that she communicated, oh, well, he walked me to my room to keep me safe. There was a security risk, blah, 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 blah. That was not her intent.
Right.
Her intention was to bring out the jealousy and the insecurities so that she could manipulate and control. I didn't find that fact out until I actually saw them interact together later on down the road at another work function where she laughed and like patted his chest and like her hand slid down his chest. I'm like, all right, this has got to be the guy that she was telling me about a couple months before. Mm-hmm. And so we had our first fight. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Like, if I had anything resembling self-worth at the time, which I was struggling with, I would have ended it at that point because it was a straight up lie. Mm. You kind of communicated with the wrong intention to manipulate, but then you also kind of lied when I asked you about it too. Right. Okay, my gut tells me that this front desk manager was either coming on to you or you were allowing it to happen, one of the two. And again, I can't assume. I didn't have expectations that we were together, but it seemed like a violation of my boundaries at the time.
Yeah. Now, before we move on kind of from this, the relationship talk, because kind of at the beginning of us just kind of discussing this, you said kind of with relationships that we always have to kind of go back to ourselves and look at ourselves. So with the different relationships that you've gone through and stuff, Dave, what has kind of been that one thing that you've really had to look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, you know what, Dave? Like, I've got to change this or I've got to improve in this area so that all of my relationships will improve. What's kind of been that one thing for you personally?
So there's a phenomenal book out there called No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Okay.
By a guy named Chapman. Don't quote me on that author's name, but I think that's the correct author.
Okay.
And he's talking about nice guy tendencies that manipulate and control a relationship where the guy is walking on eggshells and he doesn't want to bring up the crucial conversation to rock the boat and lose the woman that he's with. And that's a really bad passive-aggressive type of behavior. Mm. And I was exhibiting that in my relationships of like, I was being too passive. I wasn't addressing the concerns that were going on in my intuition. And therefore, I was allowing all this boiling over of resentment that I wasn't communicating authentically to my partner at the time. And so that was the one thing that I needed to change about my own behavior so that my relationships could improve.
Okay.
And now my behavior is like, I've got to face this head on. I don't drink anymore because it was numbing my intuition. No. So when my intuition is like firing, like it's telling me something, it's a message, it's like, all right, I got to tune into this. What's my gut telling me? Because our gut is our second brain.
Absolutely.
What's my gut telling me? My gut instinct is telling me that your intentions are not the same as mine because you violated this boundary or you stepped over that boundary. And then my expectations come from that intuition. Okay, well, I expect better of myself. My standards are higher now than they've ever been before so that I can have the relationship that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Because if my standards are low as my expectations, then I'll never level up.
Right.
I'll never have the partner that I'm looking for who's also looking for a partnership, who when I'm not around is a raving fan. Like how good does that make a partnership? How strong does that make a partnership when she's not around and I'm just raving about her?
Yeah, right.
I admire this about her. I really enjoy this about her. You know what? When we spend time together, it's absolutely the genuine connection that I'm looking for.
Beautiful. So quickly, if somebody's listening to this and they've had just a hard time, a difficult time trying to maybe find that life partner or kind of just the craziness of dating, what is and just maybe speaking more specifically to a dude because we're both dudes and we understand dudes probably a little bit better than we do the females, but so it's just speak to that guy that's just like, hey, you know what, I want to find my life partner, I want to have better experiences dating. What is one thing that they can do like right now to kind of level up and kind of have that better experience in regards to the opposite sex?
Join a men's group.
Okay.
And the reason why is Jim Rohn says that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And when you have an accountability group and it's consistent and you're all invested in it, those men in your men's group are going to help you level up. And I've been a part of 2 men's groups now for about 6 months. One is secular that's based around the No More Mr. Nice Guy book, and the other one is from my church.
Beautiful.
And they do two different things, but they're doing two amazing things for me. And both of those center around accountability and consistency. When I show up as my authentic self, maybe not my best self, when I show up authentically and vulnerably and transparently in the men's groups, it gives me a space to release all of that anxiety I have about my relationship in a safe place where I don't bring it home. And I can simply just clearly state my thoughts and my feelings to my partner and say, hey, you know what? My gut is telling me this about where I'm at right now. Can I talk to you about that? And here's what I'm feeling. What's your take on that?
Cool. Love that actionable advice. That's great. Thank you very much, Dave, for sharing that. So let's. I want to touch a little bit more, kind of like on the training and stuff. So you help trainers that kind of want to get more clients and kind of grow their business specifically online. Is that correct? You that's kind of what your focus is with other trainers and helping them?
Yep.
Okay. So what does that look like? So if somebody like myself, I want to grow my online clientele. When somebody comes to you and they kind of want that, what does that process kind of look like with you working with that individual?
We take 8 weeks with a online educational system that I've built over the last couple years of training interns and then building my studio up to about 3 teammates that I helped build their business in person, and I was working on online training and coaching other personal trainers. I built this 8-week mentorship program that uses videos and text and systems to teach personal trainers how to scale their business from 1 client to 1,000 if they'd like. And these are simple systems that anybody can use for low cost, low investment whatsoever. And each week I give them mentorship. We do a group call or a group video, and they get additional resources each and every week via email that helps keep them on track for that 8-week course.
Okay.
They have lifetime access to this, so if I ever update it, I send the updates to my team of trainers that I've worked with in Germany and Alabama and locally here in Denver, California, and Chicago as well. I send them updates, like they're clients for life, basically.
Okay, cool.
You have lifetime access to the program, so if anything ever changes and improves, like how to get the most out of your social media account in an authentic way to grab your ideal client, well, that's something that changes all the time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Those algorithms on Facebook are a beast,
right,
you know?
Right.
So
social media is we're going to touch on that here in a minute. That's a whole nother game. But.
Yeah, it could be a 2-hour conversation alone.
For sure, yeah.
And personal trainers who go through this mentorship program, they end up scaling their business like they've never seen before. You know, our client in Alabama, she owns her own studio. It's definitely a passion project for hers. She added a brand new teammate during that time who was the perfect cultural fit and who actually took some things off of her plate. The Chicago trainer that I worked with for the last couple years now, she's doubled my sales.
Wow.
And she's that go-getter. She is the intense type. She is on social media all the time, but that's not where she finds her clients. She finds her clients at the grocery store. She finds her clients at cheerleading camp. You know, that's part of her niche. And through this network of just empowered, strong, individual, independent women in Chicago. And she's doubled my sales.
Wow.
Yeah,
cool.
2 to 1. It's crazy.
Beautiful. So let's talk about social media, because that was something I actually had written down, because when I was doing a little research on you, there's kind of in your little link in your bio or profile on Instagram, you have like this little thing that talks about social media detox. So let's just specifically, because like you said, this could be a 2-hour conversation, it could be a 10-hour conversation, but what are maybe some of those pitfalls of social media that we need to kind of be aware of as like maybe trainers or people that are involved in health and fitness?
I believe that social media is a very powerful tool.
Absolutely.
When used in the right way. Like, look, we met on Instagram.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is an authentic connection that came from the power of social media. Because we're both like-minded personal trainers with an exercise science background, we had a lot to talk about. It doesn't happen with everybody you meet on Instagram. But if it's not being used in this way to grow a community or to make authentic connections with people you already know, and you're just sharing photos or whatever, if it's not being used that way, it is simply just a distraction. It's a time-consuming distraction that makes us tired. It actually takes us away from feeling present with family and friends, and it holds us back from what we actually want to do with our lives. Because, like Teddy Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy.
Absolutely.
And social media is a comparison tool through and through.
Right.
So you asked me about the social media detox. And, I'd been single for a long time, about a year and a half, and my clients and I are very close. So we would talk about relationships and dating and life in our sessions, because my clients want a distraction from breathing heavy and sweating hard and working hard. So I was sharing an experience with a girl I had a crush on, and I met her in person, but then we connected on social media afterwards. And she's like, Dave, it really sounds like you need to take a break from social media, because you're kind of, well, one, obsessing about it. Not about the girl, but just obsessing about like what was happening on Instagram at that time. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. And me, my personality type is really intense. I'll go all in. And I'm like, challenge accepted.
Right.
I promise you, because her session was Friday, ended at 8 a.m., and her next one was the next week at 7 a.m. So it was like Friday 8 a.m. to Monday 8 a.m. I promise you, I won't touch social media. She's like, great. I'll be your accountability partner. She challenged me to do that, and after 3 days, I felt so much more energy. I felt more present with family and friends. Yeah, it was hard not to re-download the apps. It really was. Because I think my business is being run on social media. But you know what? When I came back after 3 days, it was still there.
Absolutely.
It didn't go anywhere. My Instagram account didn't go up. It didn't go down in whatever numbers that I'm looking at the time. It simply was just there. As another distraction for me to come back for the next 4 days, get my work done, and then delete it again. It came down to deleting the dating apps too. Right. So I decided, you know what, same weekend, I deleted all my dating app accounts too. Bumble and Hinge were probably the ones that I found the most success with. Okay, success is in quotes, because, I never met a long-term relationship off of one of those. And that's what I'm looking for. So I deleted those as well, and when I came back the following Monday, I actually downloaded them intentionally to delete the accounts. So I deleted the accounts and I haven't re-downloaded them again. Right. About 10 days later, I met the girl I'm seeing now. Organically at a friend's birthday party.
Beautiful, man.
We have a lot of options out there to connect authentically with other people. Right. And social media may actually be distracting us from doing so.
Right. I like that. And doesn't it just make you feel better that you met that girl, like, kind of just more like organically and naturally, and like just kind of through like a an event or whatever it was? Doesn't that just make you, for you personally? I mean, everybody's different, because I had a guest on here last week, him and his wife, and they're amazing people, beautiful family. They have a young son and stuff. They met through a dating app. So and I've heard it works for people, whatever. But for you personally, did it just make you feel better that you were able to meet that girl that you're currently dating kind of in that way rather than through like an app?
I think that because when I walked in, there was an immediate spark. Okay. And yes, you can find somebody attractive on a dating app, and dating apps are great for busy people. Yeah. I thought I was too busy to actually meet somebody organically, which is why I was using them primarily to meet people. Right. But I wasn't finding what I was looking for. So what's the common denominator? If it's not me, and I've done all this work, and I've seen a counselor for over a year, and I speak to experts every single week on how to find the right person for me, well, then what's the other common denominator? It was the dating apps. Right. I'm not slamming them, because it happens. Yep. However, it also happens that people hook up once or twice, and then they're like ghosts. That happens too. Right, for sure. It happens organically as well. Yeah. What for me was, I was able to connect in person, feel the energy between us, and then actually have a conversation face to face, hear her laugh when I told her a story about my daughter, and then actually sit down at the table at the birthday dinner and have a conversation across the table to understand what our mutual interests were. At the time, she asked me out for the next day. Well, she didn't ask me out. She asked me to join her friends the next day, and I said, yeah, absolutely, I'll go, but But the event was something that I didn't really feel comfortable going to for a first interaction.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? I actually have a business meeting I need to go to. That's a priority for me right now. Let's meet up next week, Wednesday. And it happened. And we've been hanging out ever since.
Cool. Yeah, that's great, man. Now you've mentioned several times that you have a daughter and stuff. So anybody that that has a kid or children, things like that, I know it's always very important to them. So I just want to give you the opportunity to just talk about fatherhood, kind of what that's meant to you, what your daughter's meant to you, and just how she's really impacted your life and changed your life.
Man, she's a good kid. Thanks for asking about my daughter. She'll be 17 next month and a senior in high school. So we've really come to a point where we can see whether or not we were good parents. Her mom and I.
Right, yeah.
Mom and I split when she was about 2. And my daughter is very sweet, big-hearted, intelligent, sarcastic, and probably the funniest person I've ever met. So I'm introducing her to an ex-girlfriend of mine, my last girlfriend 2 years ago almost. I'm introducing her for the first time. We're at a concert, and it's outside, and my girlfriend's emceeing the event, and I introduce my daughter to her. And then we go back to talking, and my daughter interrupts, and she points at both of us. She says, "I can sense the sexual tension." And she walked away. Like, the girl and I was seeing at the time look at each other, and we laughed for like 2 minutes straight because my daughter is the funniest person you've ever met. And she was 14 or 15 at the time, just wanting to give dad a hard time.
Right, yeah.
So, like, I gave her a little bit of counsel later on. I'm like, Maddie, maybe not the most appropriate thing to say the first time you meet one of my girlfriends.
Yeah.
But nicely done. That was awesome. And I high-fived her and, gave her a compliment on her sense of humor. And she does it to me almost like every time I see her. She'll make me laugh as hard as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And that's the result of maybe not knowing everything that I needed to know as a parent, but none of us do.
Right.
Parenting is the hardest job that we'll ever do, whether we're together in a partnership or not.
Right.
But to see my daughter have a purpose and a mission for her life after high school and after we've done our fair job of raising her as co-parents. It took us a long time to become friends again, but I would say that her mom and I are now friends, and we can co-parent as best as possible.
That's great.
Hey, reach out and say happy birthday on our birthdays, or congratulations on a promotion, whatever. What does that mean for you? Maddie and I do every other Friday date nights because her social life as a 16, 17-year-old kid is busier than mine.
Right.
She has marching band, and the lesson that I learned most recently about parenting, because that was your question, is I learned how to let go. Instead of like, no, Maddie, you can't do that. It's my weekend. Well, instead of actually saying that out loud, yes, I can feel that disappointment in not spending the quality time with her. But it's almost better for the two of us in our relationship to say, Maddie, I understand that you're really busy right now and that you have priorities as well. You're very interested in marching band. Yes, absolutely. Go to band camp. Yes, absolutely. Go to your marching band performance at the football game on my time. I'll come and I'll watch and I'll take you out to dinner afterwards.
Beautiful, yeah.
And even though it's less time that we spend together now, it's more quality time. And that's what's important.
That's awesome, man. That's great. Before I ask the last question, is there anything, Dave, that we haven't touched on, or anything that you would like to just kind of maybe share with the listeners in closing?
We covered a lot, and I just want to reiterate from somebody who's passionate about improving mental health through a lot of different ways, is that we can't do it alone. We need a support community around us, and whether that's friends, we can't turn to our friends for every single problem we have. We can't turn to our family members with every problem that we have because they're not experts. I realized after my first breakup that there was something missing in my life, and it was a relationship with God. So I started to rebuild that relationship, and things got better because I wasn't alone anymore.
Right.
No matter how isolated we are as entrepreneurs, business owners, men, single men, parents, fathers, boyfriends, husbands, no matter how isolated we are, we have to reach out to the right type of person. So I reached out to God and I rebuilt a relationship, reached out to a counselor after the second breakup, and those two choices, plus jiu-jitsu and weight training and proper nutrition and a healthy social life, all were the best decisions I've made because I realized I couldn't do it alone.
Awesome. Great words. The last question that I have for you, Dave, is what motivates you?
Shoot. That's a very fluid answer. I was motivated to go back to school at 28 years old because of my daughter. She was my purpose at the time. What motivates me to get out of bed every single morning is to live out that life of purpose and passion for teaching people the benefits of fitness and nutrition for mental health. And with a strong enough purpose like that, it makes the 5 a.m. 5 days a week pretty easy.
Right.
And it also helps improve my life because I'm in bed by 9 o'clock,
Yep.
Every night and getting healthy amounts of sleep. And therefore just being the candle that lights the way. I'm not a floodlight. I'm not one of those lighthouses that has this 300,000 illums or whatever it's measured in. But, if I'm just a candle that lights the path for 10 people, 15 people, 20 people, I know we've impacted more people than that with our business, but if that's where it's at right now today, then that's enough of a purpose to keep me getting out of bed and motivated each and every day to put out 2 episodes a week on the podcast and to continue to network with business owners and to have authentic conversations like this one.
Cool, man. So, Dave, I just want to thank you man to man for your time today, for inviting me into your home, and for sharing your story and your passion. It's greatly appreciated. If somebody wants to reach out to you, if somebody wants to follow along your journey, find out more about your personal training, all of that type of stuff, your podcast, where can my listeners kind of go to find out more about you?
I'd love to connect over the podcast. Believe, Be Real, Be Bold is probably the best podcast to tune into right now because I'm going all in with that. I absolutely do love the conversations that we're having each and every week. So topics of conversation are like conscious breakups, how to handle divorce. We have an expert, a former lawyer, as an interview guest on the podcast who's passionate about coaching people through a divorce, legal side and empathy as a coach too. She's a phenomenal woman from Austin, Texas. And then simply every single Friday, I give a little bit of my perspective on self-awareness and personal discovery through the Enneagram as a tool for personal growth.
Cool. So, can somebody find you on Instagram?
Yeah.
What's that handle, if you don't mind throwing that out there?
At Believe, Be Real, Be Bold is that Instagram handle. And then if they're on Instagram, at Dave Glaser _CSCS is another place that I spend a bit of my time. Perfect. Monday through Thursday.
Perfect. Yeah. You spend some amount of time on there because that's, again, like you referred to earlier, that's how we got connected. So, all right. So, listeners, I just want to thank you again for tuning into the 127 Fit podcast, hanging out with Dave and myself. If you guys want to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram. It's at 127 Fitness. My personal account is at QVars. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please leave a 5-star rating and review for the podcast, that would be awesome. And also hit that subscribe button. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance that you think would be a great guest or a guest for the podcast, please send me an email. And that email is 127fit@gmail.com. And then as you find value in the guests that I'm bringing onto the podcast and specific episodes, please do me another huge favor and share that episode or episodes that you're finding that value in on your Facebook and Instagram stories. And then use the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. Just again, kind of like with Dave's passion, just to grow a community of like-minded people. That's my passion. That's my heart with this podcast. So again, share the episodes. Use the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. And then per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.